Before we begin, this conversation that Ron and I are about to have, it might be a little triggering for some of you. And I wanted to make it really clear before we get started that this conversation is not about attacking any religion or ethnicity or culture of people. Throughout history, we've seen in Christianity, Islam, Judaism, world governments, and political movements, as well as cults, that have all become vehicles, if you will, for both the flourishing of human expansion of our minds and consciousness, as well as the perpetuation of human suffering. And what we're really exploring today is the relationship between power and influence over consciousness and the human psyche. So I want to implore and impart that belief systems can be used against us. They can be used to empower us. They are used to inspire, to manipulate, to divide, and to control populations. And this absolutely has an effect on raising the consciousness of humanity.
I do think because of the time that we're in the timeline wars, because I think some of these things were, the dark could see what was happening and they went back in time and they planted these things. And I believe, like what you shared about the mass infiltration of Muslims, whether they're true Muslims or what, that label is important because there's such a conflict already in the minds of Christians and others that becomes a method. But I also believe there's some sort of group MK Ultra like sleeper cells.
Yeah.
And they're out there and they're in our country too.
And they are doing their damnedest to like stop this consciousness from spreading. And it is a losing battle.
While I'm on the road, I'm sure they're going to, like I said, there'll be things that I can capture. One of the things is I'm doing part of Go Dharmic's program is they feed the homeless, and I'm going to be doing a food distribution in London. So
nice.
I'll have my phone on me, so I will record that. I may not do it live, but I'll record it, and then I can have that be one of the postings that does land on a Monday at 12. Even though I'm in a different time zone, I'll just make sure that it does land that way.
Have you been to London before?
Yeah, years ago. Yeah.
Okay. I've heard that it's changed considerably. Have you heard that?
It's going through a lot of changes just because of the time of awakening that we're in. Mm-hmm. And that, like every big city, they go through a lot of changes, but they're definitely going through many changes. And I would imagine there could be some things that might be very, very unique to where we're at in humanity at this time. But
be careful while you're there, Ron. Like, I've heard from people that live in the UK, how very different things have been just in the last couple of years. It's more dangerous is what I hear.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I found one thing is, for some reason, or I want to call it my spirit guides, higher self, or just spirit, whatever. I tend to get some sort of a warning. Mm-hmm. It doesn't, I don't know how, or sometimes I don't get the warning. It just diverts my plans. Like, okay. I can't even do what I'm going to do. Like, I'm literally, I think I shared with you my when my dad was an aerospace engineer and he worked for a lot of these top line aerospace companies, Pratt Whitney, Lockheed Martin, Roar Aircraft, McDonnell Douglas, and everything else. So he traveled quite extensively as a consultant with them.
Okay,
And
wow.
in, I think it was the one in maybe like late 70s, trying to remember when it was. He literally overslept, didn't get on his plane. He missed his plane, and that plane crashed. And everybody, not a single survivor.
Oh,
So,
wow.
so even that conversation, my dad kind of saying, I know there was a reason why this all happened. Um, and yeah, so yeah, thank you for saying that. But I went, I know some people there, and obviously I'm not going to be doing much bike riding there. I'm going to be mostly with them. Um, but honestly, even with what you're sharing is also true in other parts. It's also true in other countries over there too, not just London.
It is. That's true. Um, and I'll just come out and say it. Like I haven't kept up with people in these other countries as often as I would have liked, but in the last couple of years, I know that there have been different reports coming out of Europe.
Hmm.
And I follow a few people like, on Instagram and otherwise that like they show genuine footage, not adulterated by AI.
Yeah,
And there's a lot of concern right now over there and there's concern here in Texas too, but there's a lot of Muslim establishments that are setting up in very large numbers, and they are hostile to Western people.
yeah,
And there's there's a lot of violence that's happening in the streets, not just against women, but against white men as well. And it's it's concerning. And like they have a big establishment happening in Frisco, Texas. I'm kind of following that pretty closely, but it's they want to enact Sharia law, which
yeah,
is not that is not to the benefit of humanity or civil rights for women or otherwise. And it's getting a little scary for some people. And I've heard specifically London and Paris, France. I don't think you're going to France. You're going to Italy and London,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
When I was in Italy back in 2007, a friend of mine and we stumbled into a Muslim neighborhood one morning, and we were looking for coffee. We were looking for an open coffee shop, and we were chased down the street by a drunk Muslim man who
Mm,
was shouting at us, and it was very scary. And it was a neighborhood, like it was just like a couple blocks from where we were staying, but they're in Europe, they're very clannish. Like they would sequester the Muslim people to this neighborhood, and I maybe they prefer it that way, but it would just be very separate, even if it was
yeah,
just a couple blocks away. And we didn't
yeah,
realize that, and it became an almost problem. So anyways, that was in Rome. And yeah, we also went out as a group dancing, and there was an incident where and that was just us not understanding like Italian culture. But there's anyways that it's I've just heard specifically London and Paris are strongholds that are becoming concerning. So I'm curious what you encounter when you go over there firsthand.
yeah. I would say, knowing like the patterning that I recognize, that a lot of times I'm protected from that for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
Like
That's good.
literally, I can walk through the middle of a war and I don't get touched. I don't know. I don't know why. But the other thing too was about 3 years ago, I started getting a download relative to, I don't want to say NPCs because that becomes a thing people just use, but almost like mind programmed individuals.
Yeah.
And I was told that they're going to come under a Muslim um, label because I had lived in Muslim countries for a while, like Indonesia's all Muslim, like I saw the love and I saw, but because of a religious conflict in ingredient, it's going to come under a Muslim label, and it's going to be these, and they're going to be, it's almost like sleeper cells
Yeah. No, that
being woken
tracks.
up.
That tracks
In,
really well.
yeah, and so then I went to a thing here in Sarasota, Florida, and the person stood on stage and said that exact same thing. And she said she was aware of this. She knew this was being planned. And what she shared was something really bizarre because I had kind of felt the same thing. Charlie Manson was a MK Ultra subject that went rogue. And if you remember, he started talking about Helter Skelter. Helter
Yeah.
Skelter was a religious and a racial war being engineered by our government, basically the way he was saying it. And once that happened, they took him down, put him in prison. They did everything to slander. And there are things that have come up from people that said the stories that how he is a crazy man can be true, but some people have doubted it because they said he was like a huge whistleblower, and his whole
Mm-hmm.
family had been MK Ultra, and he had um, a guy who was what do you call it when you got like the person, your controller. He had a controller. He had a
A
person,
handler.
a handler. He had a
Mm-hmm.
handler, and the handler came forth, and the handler even said some of this stuff, and the handler has now been imprisoned.
Yeah.
Um, so I do think because of the time that we're in the timeline wars, because I think some of these things were the dark could see what was happening and they went back in time and they planted these things. And I believe, like what you shared about the mass infiltration of Muslims, whether they're true Muslims or what, that label is important because there's such a conflict already in the minds of Christians and others that becomes a method. But I also believe there's some sort of group MK Ultra like sleeper cells,
Yeah.
and they're out there and they're in our country too. So
Yeah. No, you're right. They are. And it's funny, like how you called it a shell or a label. And I think it's an important distinction that it's not that it's Muslim people that are, being that should be a cause for concern. It really is like a mind virus,
yeah.
and it's something very similar to what was enacted, I would say, in uh, during the Crusades period,
Mm-hmm.
when and the Spanish Inquisition, with
Yeah.
Christianity as the vector
Yeah.
for this same very similar kind of mind virus, where it infiltrates human beings and takes them over, and it uses the religion as that vector to deliver that, if that makes sense. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
but what that does on the surface with respect to humanity and us being able to, maintain the level of consciousness that we have achieved, or that, like to hold fast to that, it becomes difficult because on the surface it looks as though, this is a Muslim problem. Like,
Yeah.
and so we're going to depict this as, these people are the problem, when in fact the people are victims of, as well, in a very different way than those that they are targeting. But it's like what you said, they're asleep. They are sleeper cells. Many within this phenomena. They do not realize what they do.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think also whatever you want to call it, the alliance, the white hats, they're so well aware of this that they're actually going in in certain ways to try to mitigate some of the things that are, again, I see a timeline war. I see it going back and going forth. I mean, I've seen so much about this. I started like writing it down because uh, this is what's causing Mandela effects in a way, because there's been so much going back and forth with where we're at right now. We're starting to realize, first of all, the light has already won. I hear that term and I kind of know that, but at the
Yeah.
same time, I see the remnants of all this stuff that's been manipulated back and forth, this things that have changed. And I believe even that what we will call the dark, right? Again, it's all a polarity game, but they are so aware that they're defeated already. It's just like,
That's why they're trying so hard.
let's torch this place on the way out.
Hmm.
That's
Right. The way it was described to me in this metaphor makes perfect sense. Do you remember like the old school like Looney Tunes where
yeah,
there'd be a like I don't know if it was like, some cartoon character was like holding a fire hose and like trying to keep the water from coming out, and then it would like come out over here and they'd poke their finger in here, and oh, it comes
right.
out over here, they poke their finger in here. That's the metaphor for, I love the white hats that you call them.
Yeah.
I've heard them called the powers that should not be, the Illuminati, whatever, the
Oh, it's the white hat,
people.
black hat. It's all Illuminati or it's all whatever, but it's the one side versus the other side, I guess.
Okay, okay, kind of like spy versus spy.
Yeah,
Like the okay, so the powers that should not be, let's go with that. They are like the cartoon character, and they are doing their damnedest to like stop this consciousness from spreading, and it is a losing battle. Like there's
yeah.
no way that they can like stop this, but they are doing their damnedest to try to quell it and slow it as much as they can. And I think that this phenomenon we're talking about with sleeper cells and using Islam as a vector to do
Yeah.
that is a perfect example of, one of their plugs, their kinks in the hose, so to speak.
No, you're absolutely right. It's all pre-engineered. It's a setup. It's utilizing again triggers that are within the collective consciousness. Religion's a big one.
Hmm.
Because we belong, we associate. The moment we belong and congregate or organize, we say we're the right ones. What does that mean? Everybody else outside of us is the wrong ones. That's the
Mm.
egoic mind that expresses that way, and we go into fear when we feel there's some other movement against us.
Yeah,
And so,
absolutely.
yeah, it's interesting how this is unfolding, but I think like you said, it is true about some of these major cities because that's where they would have it. And also, you find when there are events, whether it's a school shooting or whether it's whatever the event, it's amazing how there's instantly cameras on site, not just people with
Yeah.
cell phones, but a professional news network is already there waiting
Hmm.
because somehow they knew that this whole thing. And so being in big cities like Paris or London or something, you're going to have that attraction factor too, because if it happened out in the middle of like somewhere else, it wouldn't have the world effect.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point. And those big cities, they're big hubs for reaching as many, platforms, to reach not just people in literal physicality, but in like the actual the consciousness of the collective psyche. They're
Mm,
very high in, population density, And I mean, they feel different. You know, the energy of a very large city feels very different. Even if you were like just like staying in your apartment or your hotel room and not like mingling, you can feel the verve of the place if you pay attention like to the energetic pathways within you, you
Yep.
know, of being affected by that versus if you are just staying in an apartment or a cottage out in the country, you know,
Yeah.
like if you that feels very different. There's a lot more distraction available in large cities because we do tap into each other's thought processes. And like, I find that for that reason, I'm able to focus so much more easily, like early in the morning, 4 a.m., before people have even woken up and are going to work. Like,
Yeah.
as soon as the movement begins in my general vicinity, you know, because our energy body spreads way further than just our literal physical. And you can tap into the movement, the stress, the you know the different like thought loops that are going on in
Mhm.
people's mind as they get up and go to work and you know, manage themselves, navigate their commute. All of these things are accessible, and they have an effect on your ability to move through your day. And
Mm.
so these big cities, it would make sense why they would want a shock wave, if you will, of information, of a frequency that, you know, is going to serve the agenda that's at
Yeah.
hand.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
It's you. So you are going to you're going to go Dharmic London. That's and tell us about what that's going to be like.
So that's a nonprofit, and then they focus on humanitarian aid and helping in different ways, basically to, uh, one of them is feeding the homeless. One of them is, I think they love all, serve all, feed all is like their motto. But even the projects in India that I was involved with that cycling in raising funds, which went to schools and helped kids there, and also they do reforestation projects too. But
Hmm.
there in London is basically I guess, where they do a lot of the food distribution projects. So I'm going to be there helping out with one of those.
That's amazing. So will you be able to film or like show us what's going on in your orbit while you're there so that we can tune in?
I'm sure. I don't know how much footage I can do, and I might just ask, one of the people there saying, "Hey, is this okay if I do this to be able to, put a plug in for Godarmic and what you're doing here?" I'm sure they would say yes,
Hmm.
and I might be able to even grab one of the other team members, and I know one of the team members. So if he's there, I believe he's the one that's going to be there with me. So I believe I could probably get him because he's kind of a representative of Godarmic. So I could get him, and he'll be wearing one of their orange vest uniforms. So I could probably get some time with him, maybe just as
Awesome.
the activity's going on. So
That'll
yeah,
be great. That'll be awesome. And I know that people are going to want to tune in. I'm going to want to tune in to that.
yeah.
So